his life. So I thought this would be a good time to get somebody from the Red Cross out here. So after our last meeting, I touched base with our local representative. Her name is Katie Wheatley, and she's relatively new, isn't she? And she graciously accepted the invitation, would love to come out and talk to us about some of the things that are going on. And then proceeded to call me back 2 days later and say, because of all the commotion and adverse weather they've had in Oklahoma, she's been called up. So she is in Oklahoma right now dealing with all the stuff that you've seen on TV. But she was nice enough to ask, she said, would you like for me to get somebody else? I said, well, if you've got somebody else that would be willing to do it, that would be great, because we'd love to hear what you have to talk about. So tonight, we have, and I called you Kathy, didn't I?
Karen.
Karen Cook. We talked about that. We talked about that at dinner too, and we both agreed that no matter what people call us, we've probably been called worse during the course of our life. I know I have. But anyways, Karen Cook has been kind enough to join us tonight. Let's give her a round of applause.
Yeah, I have to lower that mic. Well, I'm real pleased to be here tonight with you all and partake of the wonderful meal. And I'm here also to talk about the Red Cross. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is. Some of you I know probably are pretty familiar, but I'm going to just kind of hit upon some of the services that the Red Cross does provide on a local basis. As director of the Red Cross, actually my office is in Floyd County, but I have the pleasure of working with Katie Wheatley, our new director that's here local in Jeff. And when she had called and said she was being deployed, she had asked if I would fill in for her tonight, and I said I'd be happy to. Been with the Red Cross myself now, going on my 36th year. So many of those years I've actually worked in the area of disaster services, and I have the pleasure of actually working with all of our southern Indiana area and taking a greater part now with disaster services in our southern Indiana area. So I find it a real pleasure to be here with you all tonight. And so let's just start, if we might, with disaster services. And since we've already talked a little bit about Oklahoma, I thought you might be interested in just hearing what some of the latest stats are as far as what we're doing in that area. So just to kind of give you an idea, this is as of through June the 10th. So yesterday, most of these figures are what we are accounting towards. So at this point, we have served more than 401,000 meals and snacks in that Oklahoma area. We've distributed more than 3,788 relief items, and we've provided more than 17,700 health services and mental health contacts. Of course, the Red Cross has opened shelters since the tornadoes came through initially, and over Sunday night, we still had more than 100 people that were still seeking refuge in those Red Cross shelters. Many of those individuals that were originally there have found alternate housing and been able to leave the shelters. But at this point, still over 100 people that are still turning to the Red Cross for overnight sheltering. So just to kind of let you know, while that is going on within our nation, and we do have a national workforce where we have trained volunteers throughout all over the Red Cross that train and prepare for these times when we have disasters. So in looking at that, we had here locally, when this disaster hit, we knew that first they would look for those volunteers that are in the Oklahoma area that would be available to help in the nearby areas and in that location. But then they reach out a little bit further. When we have something devastating like this, it affects many of our volunteers, and they too are in need of help and not necessarily available to always step forward and provide the services because they're busy taking care of their own families and their own needs that they might have. So from the local Red Cross, we We very quickly, after the tornadoes went through, we very quickly assessed our volunteers to see how many of them would be available to deploy and go for an assignment in that area. And we put together a list and put people on standby. We have what we call emergency response vehicles from our Kentuckiana region. And we put those on standby, and those actually was deployed the very next morning following the tornadoes. We had volunteers that packed their bags and got in those vehicles, and they used those in those areas to distribute some of these supplies that I mentioned, as well as doing mobile feeding routes in those areas. So from our Kentuckiana regional area, we have a total of 32 individuals that have been deployed to Oklahoma just for this incident. And about 7 of those are actually from our southern Indiana area here at home that we were able to send to those areas. So while all this is going on, meanwhile, we're still having disasters on a regular basis here at home, where what we may not think about too often, but there's single-family fires that happen almost on a daily basis in our community, or at least on a weekly basis, especially during the winter months. We get a little bit of a reprieve right now, but during the winter months, it keeps us pretty busy. So we have volunteers that work with us on a local basis that are on call, and when we have a fire of your neighbors or your family members, or perhaps even you yourself, and there may be a situation where even when you have real good, adequate insurance, in the middle of the night, you may not even be able to remember your insurance agent's name or what type of insurance you have, or be able to go to the local ATM and withdraw that money because, maybe your ATM machine or your ATM card has been destroyed. So from the Red Cross, what we do is when the fire department calls and says there's a need in the community, we call our team that's on call. We get up and respond, no matter if it's 3 a.m., 4 a.m., or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but we get up and we respond and go to the site, and we make sure that that family has a place to stay, that they have food, that they have clothing, their basic essential medical needs are taken care of. And all of this is done, on a pretty quickly basis in our community, where we're able to get up and respond pretty quick for these types of disasters. We have a great number of wonderful volunteers that work with us, and I will get my little plug in here. If you ever have any opportunity and looking for a little extra things to do, we'd love to have you join us at the Red Cross, and we will train you and provide you with the skills that you might need to do the various jobs. And you can work here at home, or you can travel abroad like many of our volunteers that have gone to Oklahoma. But in saying that, it also gives me great pleasure to know that, it's not just the times of disaster. The Red Cross is here even during times where we're trying to prepare people for disasters. One of our missions is to try to educate the individuals in our community to be better prepared during times of disaster. We know when we have very major disasters, all of our resources are really heavily taxed at times. And so we try to prepare individuals to take care of themselves. Try to establish a disaster supplies kit. Make a family disaster plan. Exercise that with your family members, and really know what to do during times of tornadoes. Where do we go? Where do we have our special meeting place if there's a house fire? How many of you have small children or grandchildren that visit your home on a regular basis? Several of you. So what we do is encourage you to sit down with those, sometimes even more so when they're visiting your home. You may not think about it as much because they're not there on a regular basis. But if you have small children that come and spend the night or spend time with you, sit down and talk about where would you go? Where would be our special meeting place if there was a house fire, if the house was on fire and we needed to get out of the house? The neighbors? Is it an old oak tree out back? Is it the mailbox? someplace that would be easily identifiable that you could go and meet up with those loved ones and not have the tragedy of wondering, is my loved one still inside? If you were suddenly called home because there was a fire in your house and not knowing if everybody's gotten out safely. So those are things that we try to instill not only among our children, but also many of our vulnerable populations that may be a little bit housebound and have a little mobility trouble. Is there a way that if you were trapped inside a special way that you might be able to make an alternate route? How would you get out of the house? So those are the types of education programs that we do, and we do offer those, like I said, on a regular basis. Just feel free to, if you have groups that you would like for us to come and speak, we'd be happy to do that at some point. Just be sure and give the Red Cross a call. But we also, of course, respond to things like we had last March, where we had the March tornadoes in our community, where we were able to respond on a local basis and try to meet the needs of those families. And of course, in that situation, it requires opening shelters. We have agreements with lots of different organizations, churches, and various groups where we can go in and set up a temporary shelter if there's a disaster in that nearby community. And these are some of the activities that we practice and plan for on a daily basis with Red Cross. We can't wait till the disaster hits. We've got to be prepared. So we're always recruiting and training, and we have regular meetings with our team members to stay prepared so that we might be able to step up and meet the needs whenever the disaster situation arises. But in addition to our disaster program, I know I've spent a lot of time talking about that, but the Red Cross also has the opportunity to provide some other services that I think are very vital and essential in our community. And one of those is the service to the armed forces. Anybody here, just a show of hands, have anyone currently that's deployed in the military? Anybody? Okay, I see several hands, okay? God forbid that this would happen, but if there is an emergency in your family, where there's a very serious illness or a death or something of that nature, then the way to actually get that service member the message, and oftentimes to get them a temporary leave so they can come home, is to contact your local Red Cross. The Red Cross is chartered and is mandated to provide that service to the military. So if you ever have an emergency, in this day and time, a lot of times people do have the opportunity where they can talk to their loved ones by cell phone or by email, and they may get, able to get a message, but it is still required for that member to get released. There has to be a verification process, and the military relies upon the Red Cross to provide that verification. So always be sure and contact if you have any sort of situation that arises in your family and you need to get that loved one home. Be sure and contact the local Red Cross. We have workers that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If there is a disaster here at home, the Red Cross is always there. And when our loved ones and members of the armed forces are deployed, the Red Cross goes with them wherever they may go, whether they go to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever they may, Germany, any place that there is a Red Cross unit. You can also find, a military unit, you will also find the Red Cross representative there with them. And it's from Red Cross here at home to Red Cross to that unit. And that's how we stay in touch and work through that process. So that's a very vital service that we've been offering for a number of years. And we don't think as much about it until we get into war times. And then that's where it usually steps up and becomes a little bit more well known. Of course, I'm sure probably many of you have seen our blood services programs and familiar with some of the blood mobiles that we may have in the various organizations. But the Red Cross is one of the largest organizations to provide blood services and blood products to those that are in need of that in our local hospitals. The Red Cross here locally in Jeff does have a fixed site every Monday where you can come in and donate at the fixed site. And then there's also locations throughout the community where we have at workplaces, we'll have at churches and various locations. Those are usually published in the paper, and you could always call the Red Cross if you'd like to find a place locally to donate or find out where the latest happenings are. We'd be happy to share that information with you. In addition to that, of course, we do offer life-saving classes. We teach first aid and CPR. You can come to the Red Cross and receive those trainings. We also send our instructors into the workplace where they will provide the training at the workplace site for members that are on staff that may need to be trained. OSHA has a lot of stringent regulations and require their workers to be up to date, and the Red Cross, like I said, will come and we'll do it at various times of the day. We have everything from first, second, and third shift, weekend shifts. We'll send instructors when it's convenient for that workplace so that we can train those individuals. As well as, of course, our classes that are open to the community that we offer at the Red Cross location. And we offer those usually about once a month. It'll be at our Jeff office where we'll have a class. And then, of course, we have classes out at my office. Or actually, right now, it's not at our office. We are currently in a very small place in Georgetown, so we are fortunate that we get the opportunity to use one of our local churches, Georgetown Christian Church, that we have a partnership, and they allow us space. But I will say that we're getting close to actually breaking ground. We're having a groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow in Georgetown. And I'd like to invite any of you that are available to come out and join us. We'd love to have you. But this is going to be a Southern Indiana Operations Center that will house more resources like cots, blankets, things like that, that will be available anywhere within our area that we might need it. Not just for Georgetown, but for anywhere in Clark County, Washington County, Jefferson County, Indiana, or Floyd or Harrison and Crawford. So we'll have resources that help us to do our job for disaster preparedness. So just want to pause there for a minute. I've talked a lot about the various programs and things that we do offer. Does anybody have any questions about the Red Cross or want to know anything about the Red Cross that I haven't covered? Clear as can be? Okay. Well, great. I do appreciate your attention. Like I said, we are always welcome. You're welcome to contact the Red Cross. If you have ideas and suggestions or things that you would like to pass to us, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you too, need to seek assistance for you or some of your loved ones, just be sure and contact the Red Cross. We look forward to hearing from people from our community and the ways that we can give back to the local ones in our areas. So thank you very much for having me.
Karen, before you sit down, I'd like to present you with our optimist tonight. Just thank you again for coming out and spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Before I turn this back over to